Hello everybody, I'm Jacob, and today we're going to be reading Leviticus 11 through 14. Numbers, Leviticus 10, we're on 11 through 14. Alright, thank you for joining us. Leviticus 11, clean and unclean food. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof, completely divided, and that chews the cud. There are some that only chew the cud, or only have a split hoof. But you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is ceremonially unclean. The coney, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the water or the seas and streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales. But all creatures in the sea or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the living things, or among all the living creatures in the water, you are to detest. And since you are to detest them, you must not eat their meat, and you must not detest their carcasses. Anything living in the water does not have fins and scales is to be detestable to you. These are the birds you are to detest, and not eat, because they are detestable: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, and any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, and any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to detestable to you. There are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all four legs that you may eat. These are those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all other winged creatures that have four legs you are to detest. You will make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches the carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every animal that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or that does not chew the cud is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass, or any of them, will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. They are unclean for you. Of the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean for you: the weasel, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, the article, whatever its use, will be unclean. Whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth, put it in water. It will be unclean till evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything is in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food that could be eaten but has water on it from such a pot is unclean, and any liquid that could be drunk from it is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. These are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean. But anything who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any seed that are to be planted, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. If an animal that touches you, that you touch are allowed to eat, dies, if an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of their carcass must wash his clothes and will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every creature that moves about on the ground is detestable. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves about on the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours, or on many feet. It is detestable. Do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them, or be made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves about on the ground. I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your Lord, or to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves in the water, and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Okay, purification after childbirth, Leviticus 12. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her monthly period. On the 8th day, the boy is to be circumcised. Then the woman must wait 33 days to be purified from her bleeding. She must not touch anything sacred or go to the sanctuary until the days of her purification are over. If she gives birth to a daughter, for 2 weeks the woman will be unclean as during her period. Then she must wait 66 days to be purified from her bleeding. When the days of her purification for a son or daughter are over, she is to bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting a year-old lamb for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering. He shall offer them before the Lord to make atonement for her, and then she will be ceremonially unclean from her flow of blood. She will be ceremonially clean from her flow of blood. These are the regulations for the woman who gives birth to a boy or a girl. If she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. In the day the priest will make atonement for her, and she will be clean. This is kind of crazy to me, that there are such precautions for childbirth. Used to be. I'm pretty sure, I don't know exactly when it was, or like when Jesus came back and died for sins, like these are all different now. In the Christian belief, you are allowed to eat pork. You're allowed to eat rabbit. You pretty much eat anything, I think. Because these were laws that they used to have to follow. There used to be so many laws. Like, I don't know if there's like 500 or 600 laws that everyone had to follow. And yeah, like nowadays, have you ever seen the most devout Christian go and burn a lamb when they give birth and wait 66 days? No, you don't, because there are new teachings, and no one could follow all of the Lord's laws, obviously. Only he could. And that's why, like, you don't have to follow these. Don't think that if you eat a pig, you're gonna go to hell. Like, yeah, I mean, these were just laws for them, not us. This is kind of crazy to me, though. Even back when they had to they had to like sacrifice a lamb for giving birth. It's kind of weird to me, but yeah. Yeah, alright. Leviticus 13. Regulation about infectious skin diseases. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when anyone has a swelling or a rash or a bright spot on his skin that may become an infectious skin disease, he must be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons, who is a priest. The priest is to examine the sore on her skin, and if the hair in the sore has turned white, and the sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious skin disease. When the priest examines him, he shall pronounce him ceremonially unclean. If the spot on his skin is white, but does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair is not in it has not turned white, the priest is to put the infected person in isolation for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine him. And if he sees that the sore is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, he is to keep him isolated for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine him again, and if the sore has faded and has not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only a rash. The man must wash his clothes, and he must be clean, and he will be clean. But if the rash does spread in his skin after he has shown himself to the priest to be pronounced clean, he must appear before the priest again. The priest to examine him, and if the rash is spread in the skin, he shall pronounce him unclean. If it is an infectious disease, it is an infectious disease. When anyone has an infectious skin disease, someone's getting home. An infectious skin disease, he must be brought to the priest. The priest to examine him, and if there is a white swelling in the skin, he has turned the hair white, and there is raw flesh in the swelling. It is a chronic skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He is not to put him in isolation, because he is already unclean. If the disease breaks out all over his skin, so far as the priest can see, it covers all the priests of the infected person from head to foot. The priest is to examine him. And if the disease has covered the whole body, he shall pronounce the person clean. Since it has all turned white, he is clean. But whenever raw flesh appears on him, he will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. He has an infectious disease. Should the raw flesh change and turn white, he must go to the priest. The priest to examine him, and if the sores have turned white, the priest shall pronounce the infected person clean, and he will be clean. When someone has a boil on his skin and it heals, and in the place where the boil was, a white swelling or reddish white spot appears, he must present himself to the priest. The priest is to examine it, and if it appears to be more than skin deep, and the hair in it has turned unclean, it is an infectious skin disease that has broken out where the boil was. But if when the priest examines it, there is no white hair in it, and it is no more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to put him in isolation for 7 days. If it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean, if it is infectious. But if the spot is unchanged and has not spread, it is only a scar from the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. And someone's back. They're bringing a drink for me and my dad, so I'm gonna be right back in like a minute. Alright guys, I'm back. Where were we? When someone has a burn on his skin, and a reddish white or white spot appears in the raw flesh of the burn, the priest is to examine the spot. And if the hair in it has turned white and it appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious disease that has broken out in the burn. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious skin disease. But if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in the spot, and if it is not more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to put him in isolation for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine him, and if it is spreading the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious skin disease. If, however, the spot is unchanged and does not spread in the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only a scar from the burn. If a man or woman has a sore on the head or on the chin, the priest is to examine the sore, and if it appears to be more than skin deep, and the hair in it is yellow and thin, the priest shall pronounce the person unclean. It is an itch, an infectious disease of the head or the chin. But if, when the priest examines this kind of sore, it does not seem to be more than skin deep, and there is no black hair in it, the priest is to put the infected person in isolation for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine the sore, and if the itch has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and it does not appear to be more than skin deep, he must shave except for the disease area. And the priest is to keep him in isolation another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine the itch. If it has not spread in the skin and appears to be more than skin deep, the priest shall pronounce him clean. He must wash his clothes, and he will be clean. But if the itch does not spread in the skin after he is pronounced clean, the priest is to examine him, and if the itch has spread in the skin, the priest does not need to look for yellow hair. The person is unclean. If, however, in his judgment, it is unchanged and the black hair has grown in it, the itch is healed. He is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When a woman or man has white spots on the skin, the priest is to examine them. If the spots are dull white, it is harmless rash that has broken out on the skin. That person is clean. When a man has lost his hair and is bald, he is clean. If he has lost his hair from the front of his scalp and has a bald forehead, he is clean. But if he has a reddish-white sore on his bald head or forehead, it is an infectious disease breaking out on his head or forehead. The priest is to examine him, and if the swollen sore on his head or forehead is reddish-white, like an infectious skin disease, the man is diseased and is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. The person with an infectious disease must wear torn clothes. Let his hair be unkept. Cover the lower part of his face and cry out, "Unclean, unclean." As long as he has the infection, he remains unclean. He must live alone. He must live outside the camp. Regulations about mildew. If any clothing is contaminated with mildew, any woven or linen cloth, any woven or knitted material of linen or wool, any leather or anything made of leather, if the contamination in the clothing or leather or woven or knitted material or any leather article is greenish or reddish, it is a spreading mildew and must be shown to the priest. The priest is to examine the mildew and isolate the affected article for 7 days. On the 7th day, he is to examine it. If the mildew, knitted material, or the leather, whatever its use, is a destructive mildew, the article is unclean. You must burn up the clothing or He must burn up the clothing or the woven or knitted material or wool or linen or any leather article that has been contaminated in it. Because the mildew is destructive, the article must be burned up. But if, when the priest examines it, the mildew has not spread in the clothing or woven or knitted material or the leather article, he shall order that the contaminated article be washed. Then he is to isolate for another 7 days. After the affected material has been washed, the priest is to examine it. If the mildew has not changed its appearance, even though it has not spread, it is unclean. Burn it with fire, whether the mildew has affected one side or the other. If when the priest examines it, the mildew has been faded after the article has been washed, he is to tear the contaminated part out of the clothing, or the leather, or the woven or knitted material. But if it reappears on the clothing, or in the woven or knitted material, or in the leather article, it is spreading, and whatever has the mildew must be burned with fire. The clothing or the woven material, or the woven or knitted material, or any leather article that has been washed and is rid of mildew must be washed again, and it will be clean. These are the regulations concerning contamination by mildew in woolen or linen clothing, woven or knitted material, or any leather article, for pronouncing them clean or unclean. Cleansing from infectious diseases. Leviticus 14. The Lord said to Moses, These are the regulations for the diseased person at the time for ceremonial cleansing. Excuse me, guys. When he is brought to the priest is to go outside the camp and examine him. If the person has healed of his infectious skin disease, the priest shall order 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop. Hyssop be brought for the one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. Several times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the infectious disease and pronounce him clean. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields. The person to be cleansed must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe with water. Then he will be ceremonially clean. After this, he may come into the camp, but he must stay outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, he must shave all his hair off all his hair. He must shave his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and the rest of his hair. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he must bring 2 male lambs, and 1 ewe lamb a year old, together without defect, along with 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. The priest will pronounce him clean. Shall present both the one to be cleansed and his offering before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then the priest will take off one of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering, along with the log of oil. He shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He is to slaughter the lamb in the holy place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and take it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right foot, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log of oil, pour it on the palm of his own left hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil in his palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. On top of the blood of the guilt offering, the rest of the oil in his palm, the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, and make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering, and make atonement for the one to be cleansed for his uncleanliness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar, together with the grain offering, and make atonement for him, and he will be clean. If, however, he is poor and cannot afford these, He must take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering, together with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 doves of 2 young pigeons, which he can afford, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day he must bring them for his cleansing to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering, together with the log of oil, and wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He shall slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering, and take some of its blood and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest is to pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the oil into his right forefinger sprinkled some of the oil from his palm 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil in his palm is to be put on the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering, on the lobe of his right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he shall sacrifice the doves or the young pigeons, which person can afford, one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. In this way the priest will make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. These are the regulations for anyone who has an infectious skin disease and who cannot afford the regular offerings for his cleansing. Cleansing from mildew. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when you enter the land of Canaan, I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land. The owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like mildew in my house. The priest is to order it has to be emptied before he goes in to examine the mildew, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the mildew on the walls, and if it has greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out the doorway of the wall, out the doorway of the house, and close it up for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return to inspect the walls. He is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside walls of the house scraped, and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the town. Then they are to take other stones to replace these, and take new clay and plaster the house. If the mildew reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out, and the house is scraped and plastered, the priest is to go and examine it. If the mildew has spread into the house, it is a destructive mildew. The house is unclean. It must be torn down, its stones, timber, and the plaster, and taken out of the town to an unclean place. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash his clothes. But if the priest comes to examine it, and the mildew has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mildew is gone. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them in the blood of the dead bird into the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. In this way he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. These are the regulations for an infectious skin disease, for an itch, for mildew in clothing or in a house, and for a swelling, a rash, or a bright spot, to determine something is clean or unclean. These are the regulations for an infectious skin disease and mildew. Woo! Holy cow, that was a lot. But if you guys stayed with me, thank you. This was a lot of reading, I'm not gonna lie. Like, anyway, thank you guys for being here. Hope you guys see you guys tomorrow. We're reading. Where my pencil again? Here it is. Cross this off. We are going to be reading Leviticus 15 and 16, which are short. So it's a short day tomorrow. And we should finish Leviticus in 3 days. So I hope to see you guys there. I'll be there. Yeah, hope to see you guys. Make sure you're reading your Bible and put it into action. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. Bye.